Hi everyone.
Hey guys.
Welcome to Girl Talk.
I think I got it this time. Did we get it?
We went the different
Like,
way.
yeah,
There you go. Left,
Okay.
right.
Right,
Let's go.
Welcome
to
Girl
Girl
Talk. I'm
Talk.
not even doing it because I go the wrong way.
Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Girl Talk. This is episode 3 of season 2. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to everyone that follows us weekly, and welcome to all new followers. We're so glad to have you with us. Just a brief disclaimer. Our guest Stacey, all our guests are negative COVID tested before they come on the show. But what is Girl Talk? Girl Talk is just basically girls talking about real issues, real life topics that don't a lot of the time get discussed. So we talk about all the topics that might be a little bit taboo in society. We like to think that we can cover all of those.
Yeah, so we've got a special guest in the studio with us today. Stacey, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We're so excited to have her with us. She has an incredible story that I believe is going to minister to each of you. You may want to grab a box of tissues because I'm sure being girls we'll probably start crying somewhere. But obviously Stacey's under no obligation to share anything she's not comfortable with. And I want you to realise this isn't just a nosy, we're not doing a show because we just want to be nosy in people's business. We choose specific topics because we know that in real life people are at a certain place that they may not feel comfortable to talk about or go to anyone for help about. Yeah. So one of the purpose of our show is so that we can help you, and it's kind of a form, some sort of counselling in a ways, because we're bringing things to surface that you may not feel comfortable to talk about, and you're living in it, but you don't know how to deal with it. So hopefully the show will minister to you tonight. I believe it will. I believe it will minister to everybody, whether you're single or married. So yeah, we're excited to hear Stacey's story tonight.
So the topic of today is when trust is broken. All of us can identify, I think, at one point in our life where trust has been broken, whether that's through a friendship, a relationship, even parental relationships. At some point or another, we all have experienced where trust is broken, and so we're going to be breaking that subject apart today. I met Stacey on a Mac counter. Actually, I was the makeup artist, and I remember you came in to buy your wedding makeup.
Yeah.
And I think I'm still surprised I never got fired that day. It was the Mac counter in Selfridges, so that it was heaving. There was people everywhere. And I just felt completely drawn to yourself and Elrica.
Yeah.
And we spent 3 hours. I don't know if you remember.
Yes.
We spent 3 hours talking, and I just was being led by the Spirit of God to just speak to you in that season. Yeah. And I remember very clearly you being very confused, very young, very torn. Yeah. You were about to get married, but you didn't have those normal yay feelings. And we spoke about that a lot. And now you're 33. So fast forward 14 years, and so much has happened in that time. So I don't want to tell your story. Yeah. Let's go back to 19-year-old Stacey. Talk to us about that girl.
So being 19 at the time, I was in a relationship with my college boyfriend. You're all goggly-eyed and in love back then, and we were preparing to get married. And I feel the uncertainty was, as a baby Christian, you think that the next step is obviously marriage. So having the proposal is really exciting, but is this really the right thing to do? But, that's the order that things are done. So I guess we're going to just get married. and we got married. So that was 2007.
So you were 19.
So I was 19 when we got married. Yeah,
Young baby.
very baby, and then by the following year we had our son together. So everything happened really quickly, becoming a wife and then becoming a mother, rapidly behind one another. But
So let's just lay the foundation. So you were both Christians.
yes,
So you were both in church.
yeah,
I don't think you were part of our church
No,
at the point.
not-
You were in another church.
yes.
So you met in church, or
No, we met in college.
so you met in
So we've
college?
known each other
Yep.
since we were 16.
Yep.
Dated while we was in college,
Yeah.
and then obviously dated again after going into university, and then obviously he proposed, and we decided to get married.
So on paper, it looks like it's a safe bet, right? You're both Christians. You're doing things the right way. So things very quickly began to go wrong, and you began to see signs even in your dating period.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
I think in the dating period was more how he treated, or the relationship that he had with his parents. There were certain signs and little red flags that would crop up there. There was a particular incident that happened, and I thought, wow, how could he treat his mother like that? But when you're in love, you think that's not going to happen to me. You think that you're so special.
You hear women with that all the time, that it's going to be different with me. You knew that he cheated with all different girlfriends before, but I'm that special. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, so that happened, and I kind of brushed it off, and never thought too much about it after that. So when we got married it was September 2007, I think by the time we got to December, so 2 months into marriage, I started to see signs that were like, what's going on here? And I think as women, we kind of know when there's changes in our spouse's behavior. And I questioned him about it, and I confronted him, and he confessed that he had been cheating.
And he just confessed.
Yeah, because
So
there was
what were the signs for those ladies that are single, that are watching this, or even those that are married? What were some of those?
Let's just go back a bit. What were the signs? Did you see signs when you were dating?
Yeah, so the signs were how he interacted with his parents,
Yeah.
how he treated
These
his
are
mother.
pointers, guys.
Yes, definitely. I really do believe how someone behaves around their family, how they treat the women in particular in their family is definitely a reflection of how they will treat you. And that was definitely a sign, a red flag back then.
Okay. Yep. So let's.
So you're
fast forward
married,
where you're married.
2 months in.
2 months in, so the behavior.
Are you pregnant at this point?
I am.
Okay, so
Yes.
you're pregnant, so probably pretty emotional
Yes,
too.
early pregnant, early stages of pregnancy. Yes, quite emotional, and you can say quite sensitive and quite paranoid as well from the situation. And I think when they're saying one thing but their behaviors are saying something completely different, it's like, are they creating an alternative reality for you? Your house and your home is one thing, but sometimes when you step out of it, it's like something's not right here. He would say one thing, do something else. He will not be where he said that he was going to be. There's a lot of excuses, and the trust just wasn't there. I couldn't trust what he was saying at the time. Then it started me to lead me to start searching phones, going through emails, and then that's when I saw conversations that he was having, which was quite clear that he was cheating, and I kind of just confronted him about it. And
So you're a newlywed. You probably haven't even unboxed everything yet. So people are expecting this blissful, happy couple. 2 months in, you find out that your new husband, new Christian husband, is cheating on you. Do you hide that? Do you bury that? Do you tell everyone? What's the process at this point? Do you want to run? Do you kind of put your heels into the ground? What are you feeling?
For me, it was definitely a shock and a devastation, because I wasn't expecting it. It's never happened to me before, so it was really quite traumatic for me. However, you're newly married, you want to be married to this person, so it's like, I'm not going to tell anybody, because I don't want anybody else's opinion to influence how I'm feeling. So we didn't tell anybody. He promised that he wouldn't do it again, and I just kind of took his word for
Yeah,
it. And I
course.
thought, you know, we want to walk in forgiveness. You know, you try and convince yourself of all these things, and we just swept it underneath the rug and carried on with life.
Yeah. So then what happened next? So obviously,
He did it again,
how far down the line?
probably a couple of months later.
Oh wow.
And it was just a rolling,
Were you still pregnant?
and I was
then?
still pregnant. It was just like a rolling pattern of behavior. Every 2 to 3 months, I'm finding something in emails or in phone calls, or you know, females are phoning his phone or phoning my phone and asking me who am I, and I'm like, oh,
wow.
I'm the wife. What do you mean, who am I?
wife, who are you?
Yes, who
Yeah,
are you?
yeah.
So confrontations like that, and how he went about doing it as well was really hurtful. It wasn't like he was with strangers or somebody that I didn't know. It was like somebody that was in our Bible study, or
Oh, wow.
yeah, somebody that was at work.
it's like a
somebody
double
who I knew.
betrayal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was really hard for me. A particular female was on the way to our son's nursery, so to have to walk past the house every day to take our son to nursery was heartbreaking. And when it continued to happen, I thought, no, we need to talk about this, and that's when we decided to seek counselling. And by then we were at Victory to Victory.
So what did that do for you? Because as a female, as a woman,
I was gonna
you
say
know, that's going to create so many
Your confidence.
insecurities
So
in
many.
yourself.
Yeah.
You're pregnant, so your body's changing.
Yeah.
You know, you're not what you know, what you might feel is your best self. And you've got this person, and the thing is, a lot of the times as human beings, we tend to blame ourselves.
Yes.
We think we point the finger at ourselves. What's wrong with us?
Yeah.
You know, am I doing something wrong? What's wrong with me? Talk us through, obviously, that process of how you felt in the process, in the midst of all of that.
Yeah, I definitely blamed myself to a certain extent, and especially with the things that he was saying. So it was like, oh, she's got this new baby, and the baby's getting more attention than me, and
so that was his excuse.
yeah, so it was like, okay, maybe I'm
Yeah.
not balancing my household right,
Yeah.
or you know, I'm doing something wrong, or am I not attractive enough? You know, is it me that's the problem? Am I causing him to do this? Am I chasing him away with my own behaviors? But then after a while, you realize, no, it's got absolutely nothing to do with me. His decisions are based on who he is and not based on who I am. So I had to learn quite quickly not to let him define me with his behaviors.
But there's a shame as well that comes with that, isn't there?
Of course.
It's like, you know, the shame is like, I don't want to tell anybody, because it's like, you know, we failed,
Yeah.
or, you know, people know that I'm not enough or something like that. So you're living with that shame, you're living with that, those insecurities.
I think what's really damaging is you can't be your real self.
Yeah.
So for us, we would be living one way at home, and then by the time we got to church, all arguments, all discussions, everything had to stop at the door. And then you go into church. He was a worker at the time, and I've got this little baby in the car seat having to praise and worship, and it's with all these tears flooding down your face, and people probably think that you're worshiping
Yeah,
through
so
the spirit,
anointed.
and the anointing is there, and your face is, you know, flooded with
Your
these
heart
tears. And my heart,
broken.
I'm broken. I'm like, Lord, you need to help me through this. So yeah, definitely the shame and the guilt will keep you silent.
Yeah.
And at this point, have you still not told anybody?
At this point, we didn't tell anybody. It wasn't until I believe women's retreat, and then I thought, you know what, let's go to pastors with this, and we started seeing pastors for counselling.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what was the next step? So obviously, did he say that he was going to change? At this point, did you feel like there was still hope for your marriage?
Yeah, I feel like, you know, with marriage, you have to exhaust all possibilities, you know, and that's what I felt I needed to do.
Yeah.
And you want to fight for your marriage. So we was like, okay, counselling is the first step. Let's go to counselling. But it was still happening. We're going to pastor Sundays after service, and by the time in the evening or the week after, it's something else. I'm finding cinema tickets or dinner receipts and all these different things. And I'm like, but you just left church and you said this and you cried and you even, you know, so it's like, what is really going on here? And we thought, okay, maybe we need to seek counselling outside of church, because sometimes, you know, we get the spiritual aspect, or maybe he needs the mental and the emotional aspect. So we sought counselling outside of church. and it would be explained the behaviors and what could be the triggers and what could be the root causes, etc. And it was really enlightening and really helpful, well, for me. It was really,
except for the one that needed it.
except for the person that needed it. And I just feel sometimes if someone's not ready to change,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what you put in front of them,
Yeah.
how much you speak to them, how much you try and, you know, encourage them, they're just not willing
Yeah.
to change. And I just
Yeah.
feel like that's where I got to with
Yeah.
him.
And you can beat yourself up with that, you know, because you're trying to. Because I know one of the things with women, we think we can fix things. We think we're, you know, the Holy Spirit Junior. We can fix things. We can make this right. We can work this. But you've done all the things that you need to do, and he's still not changing.
He didn't change. Eventually decided to separate. So
I think you said to me at one point there was it 10 women? in
yeah, I
your
think 10
relationship?
in the 3 years that we were married and in the same home, it could have been more than 10 women. But I stopped counting. I stopped investigating. I had no interest anymore. So yeah.
So did you switch off, or did you kind of numb yourself to, you know, obviously with that volume of people, you know, that's in your marriage with you,
Yeah.
do you kind of numb yourself to that feeling?
You do.
Do you get used to it, almost climatize yourself to
No,
it?
I didn't climatize myself. I just numbed myself to the situation. I basically ignored him.
Okay.
Ignored him in the house. You know, didn't talk to him for days upon days. Just continued living
So you were living
living
separate lives.
but still being in the same house. Going to university, I just continued with my studies and just investing in myself as much as I possibly could. Because
So were you cooking for him and all that?
I would cook because I would have to eat too. So it's
Okay.
not like let me just cut half the chicken and leave it and just cook for myself.
Yeah.
I would still cook, you know. Try not to be bitter. I wouldn't
Yeah.
try and instigate anything in there as well. So we just continued with life, but just not in unity.
I think you said something really powerful. You said to me when we were just having this discussion earlier, you said to me that it was only afterwards that you realised a lot of things. And one of the things that you said to me, which I think was really powerful, is you said that growing up with boys, you thought it was just normal to be tough. And you didn't even realise until afterwards that you were actually part of a domestic abusive relationship as well as a emotional and so talk to us about that as well.
So
because
being raised around older brothers, a household of boys, you're fighting for your own as the only girl, and you're told if anybody hits you, you hit them back, and you don't take anything from anyone, and that's how I was raised. So when we would get into physical altercations, because there's time where he will try and, you know, put his hands around my throat if I wasn't saying or doing what he wanted me to do. Yeah, he would try and physically manhandle me because he's, you know, 6'2", he's really tall, and I'm only 5'4". I wear heels all the time just to make myself look a bit taller. But we would be fighting, and we would be literally rolling, tumbling around the house. And at one point, his mum was there, and we were having this altercation upstairs. And I came down, and it's like she wanted to hide. And that's how I knew that something was wrong, because any normal mother, it's either you're not going to stand for that. My mum would never allow my brothers to even raise their voice at their wives, let alone to have a physical altercation. But she hid. She didn't have anything to say to me, and she didn't have anything to say to him. And later I discovered that she was also abused by her husband, which was his dad, and they lived a very tumultuous marriage. But she stayed with him through it. She stayed with him through the affairs. She stayed with him through the physical abuse. And I guess maybe she thought that I was going to stay with her son through it all. And yeah, I didn't know until, you know, embarking on counselling and learning exactly what domestic violence was. I was like, wow, I was a victim of domestic violence, and I didn't even realise it.
you thought you were just fighting back,
Being
you were
that,
just being
you know,
a
strong black woman, that, you know, that myth that we
Thank
have.
God you had brothers.
Oh my goodness, the myth of being a strong black woman sometimes can be such a hindrance more than it is anything else. And yeah, that was really quite shocking for me to discover.
So you talked about obviously the fact that his dad, you learned obviously that his dad followed in the same patterns, that it was demonstrated, a lot of his behaviour, I guess, was learned behaviour. Talk us through that in terms of, you know, what did that look like for for you when you came to that realization that okay, this is something that he's seen.
Yeah.
So in order for the cycle to be broken, what needs to now happen?
I think for me, having that physical altercation in front of his mum, and when I went back to my mum and I was explaining that this is what was happening, my parents have never argued in front of us as kids, let alone fight. So it's something completely foreign to me. So my mum was like, clearly there's something wrong, maybe you should talk to her. And at one point we had a real heart to heart, and she really shared all the struggles that she had in her marriage, and she really admitted that she wasn't strong enough to walk away. And I realized...
Did she say why?
She didn't say why. No, she didn't say why. They had divorced and even remarried. She got back with him and remarried him, and he's got other children in another country.
Sometimes it's soul ties, isn't it?
And it can be soul ties.
And that dependency
as well. You were asking me, Danny, about do I know how we can identify or change? I just think just understanding that some of our behaviours, it doesn't just start with us. We have to go back and look at our parents or our grandparents and see exactly what has been modelled or mirrored to us, that we then go out and demonstrate it. And I think that's exactly what was happening with my ex-husband. He was modelled all these behaviours and he was told that this is love because this was their definition of it. So now he is expressing it because he still says that he loves me. You know, he still says that he loves me. He's cheating and he's trying to physically manhandle me, but he loves me, and I wasn't taught that definition of love, so I couldn't stick around.
And that's really important, because one of the things that we do talk about when we do marriage counselling or seminars is that do your homework, because do your check the background, because that's obviously if that's all he's seen, you could have took that same person, put him in a different environment where he saw a father being loving, being caring, being affectionate, and he would have been different. So sometimes we think somebody is just bad, or that's just, but it's what's been mirrored to them. And that's why it's so important that we gather pertinent information before, whereas girls today, it's like, we meet a guy and we don't know nothing, but that's it. You're dreaming of wedding dresses. Do your homework.
I think something that you said, Stace, earlier when we were talking before, you said, I'm going to quote you said, date long enough to date through different seasons. Do you want to talk to us about that?
Yeah,
just following what Pastor Erica's saying. I'll say it again, date long enough to date through different seasons.
Yeah, I feel like we didn't date long enough to be able to see each other in different lights, to see how we behaved in the winter in comparison to how we behaved in the summer when things were going really well.
Explain that a bit.
I think
what seasons are for you.
For me, I think for us, transitioning from going to college to now going to university, having to now balance real life, or for him having to work and now be a father, that was a big transition for us, a whole new season in our lives. How does he now behave in this environment? And it was completely different. It's completely different to being the boyfriend that all he needs to do is, I don't know, buy you coffee or a hot chocolate, get you a panini on your lunch break or whatever the case may be, to now paying bills and having these added pressures of taking on a household and taking on a wife.
Did you see any instances where, when he was under pressure before you married him, was there any instances maybe he was in financial pressure or maybe with studies? How did he react when he was under pressure? Did you see anything?
He would go silent. He would he went inwards, and he wouldn't talk about things that he was struggling with, or sometimes he would just disappear. As I said, he would not be where he said he would be. So he obviously found his own dysfunctional coping mechanisms of how to cope with everyday stresses, whereas I was brought up in a household, you talk, you talking to your blue in the face, and I'm maybe a little chatty patty in the house, but that's how I knew to deal with problems, to talk about it. But when you're talking to yourself, there's only so far you can go, or if you're fighting by yourself, you're not going to win anyway because you're alone.
So there's always signs that you can look for. So you, in singleness, how he copes, even if you're driving in the car, that can be season, because how does he suddenly go into
we had a friend a few years ago where she had she was in an abusive relationship, and I think they were driving.
Or the way it even came to light is where we just being young girls, we wanted to go to the cinema, I think, and it was like a very impulsive decision. We weren't supposed to do that.
We're living our best life.
Yeah, we're living our best life. No kids, no marriage, nothing. And so we were like, oh, let's all go. And we remember she went and hid in the bathroom.
Yeah.
And when we found her, she was trembling, just because she knew that by going with us, it would cause a physical altercation. And when we found out later,
he'd been hitting her in the car.
She would be driving and he would be banging her
head on the steering wheel.
But it started small, with small things where she had to ask permission to go out with her friends.
So there's always signs. There's always.
And she wasn't married to him.
She wasn't married to him.
And thank goodness she didn't marry him. Well, thank goodness she didn't marry him, because when we saw that, we just said to her, this is not going to get better. It's going to get worse. And thank goodness she mustered up enough courage to leave.
I want to just go back to the family aspect, because obviously we've heard that. Obviously with his dad going back to gathering information, I don't feel like a lot of people gather enough information about where their spouse is from, what have they been raised, what are some of the things that have been imprinted in them. What advice would you give? And I think just before we go any further, can you just explain to everyone what your qualifications are? Because you're not just this person. You actually obviously furthered your education, and in all of this that was happening, you actually got yourself a qualification, and you actually now have turned this around and you help other people. So just talk to everyone.
I studied psychology and counselling at Goldsmith University, so I have a degree in that. I went on to do a postgrad in counselling skills, which you have to do in order to be a qualified counsellor. So I've worked 10 years now in the mental health industry. I've worked for some of the largest organisations, from MHA to the Priory Group, working with people with mental health. So just trying to use my experience both professionally and personally, to support others.
And that's, I really wanted to kind of bring that out, because she's not speaking from just a black woman perspective. This is the way it tricks out. She's actually been able to turn this around, and in turn help other people. So the advice that Stacey's giving is actually one that is qualified. So I just really wanted to kind of bring that into the conversation.
I just want to quote Stacey again. I've been taking notes of all our conversations. Like, she's literally a wealth of wisdom and knowledge, guys. So go into what Danny was saying about the family dynamic and everything. I think we were talking about, especially amongst the Afro-Caribbean, African, Black communities. I'm not saying it doesn't happen with Caucasian families or anything, but I think it's more prevalent with Black families, is that we tend to bury everything and hide everything. And you made a quote. You said a quote which says, "Secrets claim new victims." Can you talk to us about that?
So for us, or even for myself as an example, the secrets were the domestic violence that happened between his parents, the children that his father had in another country. Those were all secrets.
Oh, so that wasn't known?
No, it wasn't known to me.
Okay.
And it wasn't known to my ex-husband at the time either. So when it all came to light, it was I am now the new victim of a secret that they've had all this time. Because maybe if I was armed with maybe just a little bit more information, when I saw aggressive behavior, I might be like, red flag, I know that your dad used to do this, or whatever the case may be. So I definitely believe that past traumas can definitely claim new victims, which is why it's not good to have secrets. Your children, we all need information to be able to make the best decision for our lives. So if we're not armed with that information, we always end up making bad decisions.
And it's such a terrible thing within the Black community, especially. I mean, we're talking because we know, but within the Black community, your grandmother will go to her grave with secrets, and there's so much that we don't know. Because I know, like, for me, when my parents, I'd be like crying, not for things that was personal to them, but who's this? I went to my dad's brother's funeral. I'd never met him. and they live in the same country.
Wow.
And he'd never talked about him, and the families had never met. And it's that secrets thing. And I found an uncle that would give me, I didn't even know the name of my grandparents from my dad's side. I had to ask my uncle, and it's just that secret thing that our community, and someone has to stand up and say, it's going to stop with me. I'm not going to, you know, we started a family tree because I want my kids and my grandkids and my great grandkids to be able to say, you know, this, we know our family. We know, you know, who
we
are.
as
we
well,
know who
because
we are.
that's a part of your identity.
Exactly.
So sometimes when something is missing, some people, they struggle with understanding who they are or trying to identify who they are in life because so much information is missing.
Lost.
And going back to the parents, the families, the secret, I think one of the things that you said, which was really powerful, is you said that your ex-husband knew certain things about his dad and actually purposely did not want to become that. And you used a term which I don't think I'll ever forget for the rest of my life. You said that he was unable to reparent himself. And I think that that's so powerful because some of us may never identify with someone cheating on us or committing adultery or anything else, but I think all of us can identify with something, a trait from our upbringing, our culture, or our family, which is one that we don't want to pass on. And one of the things that you said, and I think most people will look at something negative and say, I definitely don't want to become that. I don't want to be that dad. I don't want to be that mom. I don't want to be that wife. I don't want to be that husband. But I think that what you said was really profound, Stacey, that most of us don't know how to reparent ourselves. So talk to us about what reparenting yourself looks like, feels like,
and how we could do it.
How do we do that?
So obviously with reparenting, it's a conscious decision to recognize that I wasn't given this particular thing. So whether that's emotional, a lot of us don't even know how to articulate how we are feeling. We don't know how to even put our feelings into words. So sometimes it's really hard for us to then communicate what we're feeling. So to be able to find language, to be able to use that, you have to now consciously make an effort to go out and learn, okay, these are the different feelings and these are what they look like and this is what it feels like. And you have to teach yourself, recognize that I may not have been given these tools, but I can teach myself. And in order for you to even better parent your children and to help heal your children, you have to first heal the child that's inside of you. Because for us clinically, we're all just big children. We're all just old children. It doesn't mean that when you're now an adult, all of a sudden, I'm this new person, I'm this mature. No, everything that you've learned as a child, you've carried on into adulthood, and especially in marriages and in relationships. Single issues now become married issues. It's an I problem now becomes a we problem. It doesn't mean that because we're married, now everything we start afresh today since we said I do. No, we've carried everything with us into this marriage. And it's really important that we reparent ourselves, and it's a real conscious decision to be committed to something on a daily basis.
That's so good. And I think it's so crucial, and everyone that's watching, that we identify the destructive cycles that may have taken place in our life. And I think it's really about having that time of self-reflection where we examine ourselves to find out, okay, sometimes you just do things and you don't know why you do it. Sometimes you react in a way and you don't know why you react in a way. It's really, and not everyone is able to trace back, because we have talked about obviously family secrets, so not everyone's able to trace back that this came from my grandparent or my parent, because they may not know, they might not be able to identify that.
Still be alive.
But I think it's not to just accept that this is the way that I am. I think it's to identify destructive behavior and actually make a conscious decision to change it.
Definitely. I think trauma is not our fault, but healing is our responsibility.
I love that. Say that again.
Trauma may not be our fault, but healing is our responsibility.
So good.
We have to take ownership of it. We can't leave it to
Miniaturize
anybody else.
But you know, one of the powerful things with that healing process is forgiveness.
course.
And even with the traumas, you know, there's nothing you can do about that.
Yeah.
It's happened.
Yeah.
And it, you know, to take responsibility for my healing process, it always has to begin with forgiveness.
I think
Yes,
you
and I
said
think-
that you
yeah,
said
and
you
I
had
think
to
for
learn to
me,
forgive
I
yourself.
have to forgive
Yeah.
myself. I have to forgive myself.
Otherwise, you can't heal.
Otherwise, you can't heal. I have
Yeah.
to forgive my 19-year-old self for not knowing what she didn't know.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
can't do anything about
Yeah.
that. I only was armed and equipped with what I knew then to manage life. I can't look with my 30-odd-year-old eyes and be like, Stacey, how could you do that? Of course you could.
Yeah.
She was vulnerable. Of course
Yeah.
she could. She wasn't equipped. You know,
Yeah.
she didn't have the wisdom and the
good.
experience that
Yeah.
she had now. So I had to
Really
forgive
Yeah.
myself for
That's
not knowing
another
what I did back
statement.
then. Yeah,
That you
I
were
didn't.
not equipped. And I think a lot of the times we think we're equipped when
Yeah.
we're actually not
Yeah.
equipped
Yeah.
to be making those decisions.
Yeah.
And so many girls cut off the voices of reason.
Yeah.
And there was something, you know, there's lots of quotes that you made. You talked about not getting advice from vertical, but
Yes,
getting
I
the
love
horizontal.
that.
Yeah.
Say that again.
No, she hasn't said it to them.
Okay.
They told them, well, this is so good, guys.
Yeah, so we were talking about not getting advice from vertical friends. So your peers, people that are on the same level as you, don't run to them. Get involved with people of influence who are horizontal to you, who've lived before you, have more experience than you, more wisdom. They've done this
good.
road for a long
Yeah.
time, and get underneath them.
Yeah.
Because I felt like that was definitely missing in our lives.
Yeah, that's so
Yeah.
crucial.
So powerful.
Wow.
It's so
And you said lots of powerful things. You're just powerful. Go to her for counselling. She'll help you.
Honestly, I'm just really proud. I just wanted to say out there, coming through that, you're not bitter.
Yeah.
You've not stepped back. You've raised an incredible son,
Yeah.
and you're doing so incredibly well. And you know, I know the cliche about the powerful black woman, but
Yeah.
you have actually come through this
yeah.
and become that.
Yeah, and I was saying to Sarah, and
Yeah.
obviously just being online, it's also because I was in a sound church.
Yeah.
You know, coming to Victory actually changed my life. Sitting underneath yourself as an amazing black woman and the wisdom and the word that you continuously imparted into us, you have no option but to grow. When seeds are being dropped into you constantly, something has to catch at
Yeah.
some point. And you might think in the time of the sowing that it hasn't caught, but when you see the blossoming or the fruits of it, it's like, wow, what Pastor Erica said was so right.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things that I've always taken away is investing in myself. You've always encouraged us as women to go and have your own goals. And I think if my only goal was to be a wife and to be a mother, I would have been stuck when that was
Yeah.
destroyed.
So good.
You know,
So
but I
good. Say that
continue.
again. Say that again. Just say it all again. Just say everything twice.
That is so powerful, because that
Let's
is
say it again.
that
Let's say it
is
again.
where most women reach. It's like, that's my goal.
Yeah.
I want to be a wife. I want to
Yeah.
be a mother.
But let
Boom.
us say it
That's
again in case
it.
they missed it. Go on,
No,
say it
so
again.
just not having the goal of being
Yeah.
a mother or a wife, because when
Yeah.
it was taken
You
away,
would have got stuck
I would have
there.
been stuck there. I would have
Oh,
lost who I was. That
Yeah,
was if my
that would've been
identity
it.
was wrapped up in
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But Pastor Erica has always encouraged us to have your own goals. You know, go out and get qualified. You know, learn new skills. And I've
Girl
always
power.
done it.
Yeah.
I've grabbed every
Yeah.
opportunity
Yeah.
at work. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes free education, free qualifications.
Yeah.
Yes, they might hold you in a couple of years on the contract because
Yeah.
you've gotten it, but it's
Yeah.
worth it. I've invested in myself, and I
Yeah.
can use those skills now.
So you are raising an amazing
that's it.
son. Well done.
Yes.
13 now. I'm
Yeah.
just like, oh my goodness.
That's,
Teenager.
that's not easy in this day and age to raise children, full stop.
No.
Yeah.
But he obviously, his dad is his dad, who
Yeah.
his dad is.
Well,
Will
let's talk a little bit about that, because we're not just talking about someone that had infidelity issues.
Yeah.
He actually had a sex addiction,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So he was.
Yeah, so
he
when
was
I
like-
received counselling
Yeah.
outside of church, that is what was discussed. That it was an addictive behaviour, and that was his coping mechanism, was to use sex to deal with a lot of his
Some
issues.
people do alcohol,
some people have-
drugs.
Because I want to
It's just-
paint that
yeah.
before you go into answering Danny's
Yeah.
question, that this was actually an addictive behaviour. This wasn't somebody that just, you know, saw girls and was like, oh, you're nice. Like,
Yeah.
it was actually an addictive behaviour. It was something that they were addicted to.
Yeah.
So then go into Danny with now your son.
Yeah, so obviously, I guess now you're very conscious of how he's being raised,
Yeah.
what's
Yeah.
being passed from one generation to the next. How did you navigate that?
I just think, just learning from previous experience about having secrets. We've just been so intentional that we're not going to have secrets in the household. We're going to tell you why we divorced, why we separated, what the behaviors were, and what it looked like, and where we both went wrong in terms of dating. It's not just two individuals, it's two families as well. So if you're embarking on it, we need to know the family of this person. We need to know where they're from. We want to meet them, so just letting him know beforehand, this is what we're looking for, and just teaching him how to articulate how he's feeling, because I feel like that's also what his father struggled with. He didn't know how to express what he was feeling. So giving a language to the pain and being able for our son to articulate how he's feeling, and sometimes that might not always be able to come from you, because we're not always equipped with that, but embarking on different activities. So my son is a debate mate leader. He has debate mate at school, so they have these topics, so they have to stand on stage and debate their little hearts out, but it enables him to have a great oracy set of skills that he can vocalize what he's feeling, what he's thinking. And so if you can't do it as a parent, there's so many resources out there that you can embark on to ensure that they can express themselves.
You said something so profound, and it just kind of was tucked in there. I just want to bring it out. You said to learn the language of pain.
Yeah, learn the language of pain.
How do you learn the language of pain?
Exactly. It's something that has to be taught. We don't know how. Sometimes it's like, oh, I just feel hurt, or I'm angry, or I'm frustrated, but it's really pain. Sometimes we misdirect or miscommunicate what we're actually feeling. So for him to be able to understand, if you're having these emotional pains, which is something that is really hard to articulate, this is what you say, or this is what it feels like. It's easy to, physical pain, my arm is hurting, my leg is hurting me, but what in your heart is hurting you, or something in your mind is hurting you, what do you say to that? So it's just giving him the language as well that he can use.
And that's so powerful, because one of the things, again, it's not a knocking black people thing, but just drawing on experience. I know there's a lot of black parents will make decisions and the children are never involved or never consulted, even from like if they're leaving to go to another country, they don't feel they need to tell the children that they're doing that. So there's that separation, that involvement's not there. It could be that they're changing churches. I think some parents, they'll just they decide to leave church, the children are not involved in that discussion, and then there's that pain and that confusion. And I remember something my husband said, that his parents had made some decision, they were going to divorce when he was younger, and he was devastated because they never sat down and talked to them. It was just something that they were told is going to happen. And he went away to his room and he processed that pain as, it's my fault. It must be me, that why they're doing this. So that opened up that whole pain to rejection, and that feeling of betrayal, etc. So it's really important that as parents we really do, not just the kids and their opinions are not important, it's really important that we bring them in.
Well, I think that you took it a step further, because it's not just about a dialogue with your children. I think that one of the things that you discussed with me, and I think that you just touched on now, is giving your children effective coping mechanisms. And I spoke to you about the sermon that I heard once, where he said, with the story of Sleeping Beauty, with the what do they call them, the spindles, where instead of hiding them all up in the loft, why not take a spindle and say, this is a spindle, if you prick your finger on it, and if I feel like, and you will die, so don't do it. And I feel like that's exactly what you've done with your son. Listen, this is what your father's history was, this is what your grandfather's history was. If you don't want to become that, these are the coping mechanisms. And I guess I just want to touch on, how do we, because we may be, we may have some parents sitting here today that say, I can definitely identify with everything you've said, but how do I now take my 15-year-old son, or take my 16-year-old daughter, or take my 13-year-old child, and now hand them these coping mechanisms? How do we find the coping mechanisms? How do we pass those coping mechanisms down to the next generation?
Yeah, I definitely think it starts with awareness.
Yeah.
If we're not aware of the patterns, the cycles, the behaviors, if we're not aware, we will just continue them. So we really have to, as Danny said, really have self-reflection, be able to self-evaluate ourselves and our behaviors, the good and the bad, because it's really easy to just run with the good that we're doing, but we're not looking at the bad stuff that we continue to hold on to, and sit down with our children and be transparent. And it's not just a you thing, it's an I thing. And I think that's where we go wrong sometimes. We're so wrapped up in you shouldn't do and you shouldn't do, but it's like, so but what are we actually doing? So it definitely starts with leading by example and modeling the change that you want to see for your children, creating a new environment in your household, in your family that you want to see. And as I previously discussed, getting around other people that are modeling the behaviors that you want, because as I said, we're not always equipped to do it ourselves. So if that means having to go to counseling, if that means having to go to therapy, if that means partnering up or buddying up with other families that are doing what it is that you want to do, whether that's open communication, and don't be ashamed to ask, do you know what, Pastor, how did you do this? Or how did you manage that? Don't feel ashamed in any way to ask for help or to not know what you don't know. It's not your fault. And you just be vocal and honest about it. And then with your children, as Pastor said, include them. Include them in everything that you're doing. And I think modeling is just one of the most powerful things, because even as simple as a father apologizing to a mother for his behavior is so powerful. They learn that, okay, conflict, it does happen, but then this is how we resolve it. And it's okay for men to apologize to a woman, and see that there's love and forgiveness, and there's they're being embraced again.
I just wanted to say, I want to just, from your professional perspective, because obviously I think in the Christian community, I think infidelity is one of those taboo, unspoken topics, and domestic abuse. I just want to ask, from your professional perspective, if there is anybody online where they have been or they are in a marriage or a relationship where there is infidelity or domestic abuse, and they do want to make it work, because not everybody wants to divorce. Some people want to work it out, they want to push through. What would you advise them in your professional perspective?
Seek counsel, definitely, and not just spiritually as well, professionally and clinically, and because not all pastors are equipped with what mental health issues look like, etc. So seek the clinical side as well. But it's really important that you speak up and you talk up about what's actually happening within your marriage, and be open and be honest, because sometimes people can go counseling and still hold back. And then they're not going to get the benefits of the transparency or telling the truth, and just really lifting up the veil of what's really happening. So speak out, seek a counsellor.
Sorry, I think our video is paused.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yep, go on, carry on.
Seek out professional help and support, and then implement those changes that's being advised to you. There's no point in having the tools and then just lock them away in a box. You actually have to use them continuously, and be patient. Be patient with yourself. Be patient with your spouse. This is generations of behavior that it's not going to change.
Unlearn.
You have to unlearn. It's not going to happen overnight. So give yourself grace, give your spouse grace, and continue to have open lines of communication, and be honest with your spouse. I'm finding this difficult. This session was really hard, but this is what we're going to do about it. And just having that open communication and being unified is half the battle, really.
Before we run out of time, I know that obviously you are a woman, so we're speaking from a woman's perspective, but I think that what you're saying is also so powerful to the men. And I know that there's some men online that are listening now who can very readily identify with a man, a father that has been a negative role model, and a lot of men do automatically fall into the trait of repeating learnt behaviours. What would you say to our men? about breaking those cycles and not becoming their dads if their dads weren't somebody.
And I think also it's not just a learned behaviour. I think there's a spiritual side to it,
Yeah.
where there is that spiritually. It's like, you know, sometimes you go to the doctors and they said, is there anyone in your family that has this and that disease? But there is a spiritual thing that passes. A friend of mine, it was alcohol. And it was from one generation to the next, to the next, to the next, and it was just that thing. It wasn't a learned behaviour. It's something spiritual. So with that in mind, with what Sarah's just asked, how do we work through that as well?
Yeah, I think for men in particular, recognize that it didn't just start with you. Okay, what you're struggling with, what you battle with, didn't start with you. It started maybe with your father or your grandfather, and genetically, you know, as I explained, you know, on the phone, 3 generations can live in one body. So you're experiencing what your father experienced and your grandfather experienced. And our genes, only 2% of our genes are physical characteristics. So your eye color, your hair color, the rest of it is behavior, characteristics, emotions. So you're carrying all of that with you. So it might feel like a really huge battle. It might feel like a really huge mountain to climb. And that's the reason why. But recognizing that and then taking ownership of where you are today and recognizing that it's now your responsibility to change. How do I change? You need to seek out the correct support, seek out the correct help. Talk about what you're feeling, talk about what you struggle with. Don't hide it, don't keep it a secret, don't be ashamed. It doesn't make you any weaker. It actually makes you even more stronger to be able to articulate something that you was not equipped with. To know that you're now going to pass it on to another generation, your children and your children's children. So I think the first step is taking ownership, speaking out, and getting around some really strong men, some horizontal men, not vertical men, some horizontal men that are living what you want, that are behaving in the ways that you want, that have the marriages that you want, that are raising the children the way that you want to raise, and that have the jobs and the careers that you want. And even spiritually as well, what kind of fruits do they bear, their characteristics, you know, get around them, and you will change.
So I think you said something really powerful. I just want to slip this in really quickly as well. You said many times, men especially, they hide behind success and they hide behind a car or a house or money. And so on the surface and from everybody else, it looks like they're functioning really well, and they can almost justify or appease who they are based on these successful things that they've accomplished, these accomplishments. But you're saying that those things don't mean anything if inside we're broken.
Yes, it's just superficial, which is why, you know, suicide is so high amongst men and mature men, because they've reached a level of success in their lives. Now you have to retire. Now you're slowing down. Now your identity is no wrapped up in your job role, or no longer wrapped up in your children. They've graduated, they've moved on, they've left the house.
Well, now your security blanket's removed.
It's gone. Now you have to deal with yourself, and you realize that who you are on the inside is this broken child that you left behind many, many years ago. And it's devastating. Some people cannot handle the reality of this. And a lot of time, even with lockdown, it's just put this mirror in our face, like, by force, you have to now deal with yourself and look at yourself. And not everybody can handle that. It's as Pastor Erica said, it's a security blanket that they all have, but once it's removed, it's devastating.
We're almost out of time, but I know it's gone so quickly. We've literally just got a few minutes left, but I really want to bring it back to what this whole episode is about, when trust is broken. So there's trust that's broken for many different reasons. Many people experience betrayals, whether it's in friendships, family, relationships. How do we rebuild the trust? Because I think that that's really important, because when trust has been broken, it can feel like a betrayal. Oftentimes it feels like there's no way back, depending on what the betrayal is. How do we now start to rebuild the trust back?
You have to leave the narrative where it is and leave the responsibility with whom the responsibility lies. And a lot of the time what happens is we take on responsibility that doesn't belong to us, and then we carry that through with us. So we have to leave that behind, forgive who we need to forgive, as I said, including ourselves as well, and be intentional that you're going to now change the narrative of your own story. You don't have to be defined by the infidelity, you don't have to be defined by the domestic violence, you don't have to be defined by, you know, any abuse, sexual abuse, whatever it may be. You don't have to be defined by it. You can define who you are. And part of our definition is we find it in Christ.
Yeah.
Write your own story.
Yeah, you write your own story.
Right. Yeah.
That's good.
That's excellent.
So we've got obviously she's a wealth of wisdom as we can
We
see.
might need to bring everyone.
Definitely.
Talk about something else. We'll think of something.
But we're just going to open it up. If you guys do have any questions, if there's anything that you want to pick Stacey's brain for, we have a few minutes. We've got just under 5 minutes. If you want to ask her any questions, shoot away, and she will do her best to answer them.
I'll start with a question, because there's a slight delay in getting to people. But you know, I know for me, I was not married at all. I didn't have any children, and I know that feeling of, you know, when someone cheats on you, how soul destroying that is. And I think that the mental part was the hardest part to get over. You know, the comparisons. Was it because I was like this? Was it because I was like that? How did you rebuild that, where you weren't constantly then comparing yourself to the girl that was curvier, the girl that was skinnier, the girl that was taller, the girl that was shorter, the girl that was lighter, the girl that was darker? Because I'm sure that the devil must have come at you with that. How did you get out of that? Are you out of that?
Yeah,
Do you
I
still
think
feel
for me, as I said before, I had to go to counselling. And
so
while
you done your own individual
I did my own individual counselling. Even when you become a counsellor, you still have to do hours of your own personal counselling. They won't let you qualify without it. So I just utilise that time to really.
Are you ready?
I'm just going to tell you, this is the situation. This is my history, and these are the areas that I struggled with. But again, as I said, don't take on the identity or the responsibility. Recognizing that person's behaviour belongs to them, and it's because of who they are, why they've done it, not because of who you are. And you have to detach yourself from that. You have to let that go.
That's really powerful. Because that's what we do. We take on
their identity,
and we're carrying all this stuff. You guys need to listen to this broadcast again, because there's a ton of nuggets.
There's so many nuggets in here. But I want to ask, what's next for Stacey?
Oh my goodness!
What's the next chapter?
For me, at the moment, I've applied for my master's in domestic violence and sexual abuse, because I've realised that a lot of clients that come through my door, that is their story and that is their history, and I just want to be better equipped to be able to support them. And it's also got like a human rights international aspect to it, so I'm always like, you know, I can go all over the world and support people with this particular area. So that's me on a professional side. On a personal side, I can say I'm single and settled. You know, I'm really happy with where I am at the moment, and you know, where I've come to at a point. If love is on the cards, that's amazing. If not, I think Christ has got so much work for me to do, and I'm so happy to wrap myself up in that at the moment. You know, I think on a personal journey, I know that he's calling me to a lot of stuff, and he's like, you can't be complacent with your gifts anymore. So I'm just trying to walk out in that as much as possible.
That's awesome.
So you got 2 minutes. What do you want to say to everybody that's listening, men, women? What's your last thoughts? We don't want you to leave feeling like you should have or could have or would have said anything. Is there anything
I think I'll just repeat what I said. Your trauma may have been what have happened to you, but your healing is your responsibility. Take ownership of your life, and write your own story.
And if anybody wanted to seek you, some people are asking on that.
We all need a session.
If anyone wanted a Stacey session, I think I'm just going to do mine informally via the phone. What do you want to say to me today, Stacey?
Oh my goodness.
What can they find you? Do you have your own business?
You can find me on Instagram. On Instagram, it's got my own booking information. You can go through. It says what I do. It's got
Give
a little
yourself
time.
plug.
So at Stacey Gashiri, you'll find me on Instagram. My surname of STACY, no E, surname GACHERU.
And we'll definitely put it on this IGTV as
And
well.
don't be that one. There's always one, because I know as a makeup artist,
Yeah, she's not
you
doing no
always
freebies.
we don't do freebies.
Yeah.
Okay,
This is her career.
This is
Yeah.
her job.
Yeah.
You've had it free on Girl Talk. Replay.
This
if
is
you
your
need
counselling
to.
session.
This is your counselling session. The rest will cost you something.
But we want to thank Stacey for coming on. We thank
Thank
you
you.
for your
Thank you
transparency.
for having me. Thank you.
Everyone's asking for a part 2.
Oh my goodness.
Everyone's asking for part 2. So we listen to you guys, so we will definitely
We'll
have
have a
Stacey
talk,
back if she
yes.
wants to, if she
Yes.
wants to come
No,
back.
Definitely, I'll
We've
be
loved
back, guys. I'll
having
be
her.
back.
We've loved having
Yeah.
her, and
Yeah.
thank you again for your transparency.
Yes.
I think you don't realize how many lives you've just impacted, and
Yeah.
it's not even just the people that are online now. People rewatch this.
Yeah.
It gets passed around, and I would urge you to share this.
Yeah, this one's
Pass
such
this
one.
around. You have
Yeah.
no idea how much this can set somebody free.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for watching.
Thank you
you,
guys.
We have another great episode for you next week. We will see you next week
Yeah.
for another episode of
Girl
Girl Talk.
Talk.
See you next
then.
week at
Bye.
8:30.
Bye.
Bye bye.